Was ist das Größte, das dir seit deiner Teilnahme an The Voice passiert ist? Das ist doch klar, oder? Ich habe hier meinen Verlobten kennengelernt.
They met on the set of The Voice, world apart. Punk pop royalty and a country music star. And everyone thought they knew the story. Duets, red carpets, interviews. Their love was out in the open. But Gwen Stefani has been holding back one thing. A truth about Blake Shelton the public has never seen. A side of him that changes everything you thought you knew. For nearly a decade, they've navigated fame, family, and heartbreak. But behind the cameras, Blake did something that no one expected. A gesture so simple, so quietly powerful, it reshaped their entire relationship. Gwen recently spoke out, revealing a secret about Blake that shows the depth of his character. It's a moment that flips the story we've been watching for years. The question is, what did Gwen finally share, and how does it redefine Blake Shelton and their decade-long bond? When two worlds that shouldn't mix collide. If someone told you in the early 2000s that Gwen Stefani and Blake Shelton would end up together, you probably would have laughed them out of the room. She was Hollywood glam with a ska punk edge. He was small-town country with a fishing pole in one hand and a beer in the other. They weren't just different, they were total opposites. And yet, fate threw them onto the same stage in the spring of 2014. The place? The flashy set of NBC's The Voice. You know the drill. Those giant red spinning chairs, the lights, the hopeful contestants, and of course, the judges. At that time, the panel looked like a music hall of fame lineup. Gwen had just been tapped to join alongside Pharrell Williams, Adam Levine, and Blake Shelton. Now, here's where it gets funny. Gwen admitted later that when producers first told her she'd be working with Blake, she literally had no idea who he was. Zero. She thought he was the guy with the drink. Imagine that. This global pop star who'd sold millions of records didn't even know the name of the man who had racked up over a dozen #1 hits on the country charts. To really understand how far apart their worlds were, let's lay it out. Gwen was California through and through. She grew up in Anaheim, turned her high school band No Doubt into one of the biggest groups of the 90s with hits like Don't Speak and Just a Girl, and then Reinvent. Dee herself as a solo artist with Hollaback Girl, which made history as the first digital single to sell over 1 million copies. Her look, bleached hair, red lipstick, and edgy fashion, was as famous as her voice. By 2014, she was married to Gavin Rossdale of the band Bush, raising 3 kids, running her fashion line LAMB, and still juggling music. Her life was fast-paced, international, and very, very public. Blake, on the other hand, was a country guy. Born in Ada, Oklahoma, raised on small-town values, and always quick with a joke, he was the kind of guy who could talk about deer hunting 1 second and belt out a heartbreaking ballad the next. By the time he joined The Voice in 2011, he was already a big deal in Nashville with hits like Austin and Some Beach. He was married to fellow country superstar Miranda Lambert, and country fans knew them as the genre's golden couple. He loved fishing, beer, and his ranch. For him, New York and Los Angeles were a world away from home. So when Gwen and Blake sat in those big red chairs together for the first time, they might as well have been from 2 different planets. Gwen admitted she thought his Oklahoma charm was funny but foreign, while Blake teased her about her designer clothes and Hollywood vibe. Their banter worked for TV. Fans loved watching this unlikely duo throw playful jabs at each other, but there was nothing romantic about it. Blake later admitted that in that first season with Gwen, he actually bonded more with Pharrell Williams than with her. And maybe that's what makes what happened next so wild. Because under all the bright lights and friendly teasing, both Gwen and Blake were hiding something. Their marriages, hers to Gavin Rossdale, his to Miranda Lambert, were cracking behind the scenes. Neither of them had any idea that the person sitting just 1 chair away would soon become the lifeline they didn't know they needed. At that point, it was just 2 co-workers sharing laughs. But only a year later, everything would change. Scandals, heartbreak, and divorce would tear their lives apart. And in the middle of all that chaos, Gwen and Blake would crash into each other in a way nobody saw coming. The summer that broke them both. 2015 wasn't the year Gwen Stefani or Blake Shelton thought they'd find love. It was a year everything they had built came crashing down. And it didn't happen slowly. It happened like a 1-2 punch in full view of the public. It started with Blake. In July of 2015, news broke that he and Miranda Lambert were divorcing. 4 years of marriage, done just like that. And this wasn't just another celebrity breakup. To country fans, Blake and Miranda were royalty. They sang together, toured together, and built a life that fans thought was rock solid. The split was so sudden that even close friends in Nashville were caught off guard. The tabloids had a field day, throwing out every rumor you could think of: cheating, clashing schedules, drinking, even fights over where they wanted to live. Blake later said the decision to divorce was made quickly, and the papers were signed in just a matter of hours. Imagine that. One of country music's most celebrated marriages over in less than a day. And then, barely a month later, came the second bombshell. In August of that same year, Gwen Stefani and Gavin Rossdale announced they were separating. 13 years of marriage. Nearly 20 years together. 3 sons. It was devastating. Gwen had always called Gavin her dream man. He was her first real love, the father of her children, the person she thought she'd grow old with. On the outside, they looked like one of the last long-standing Hollywood couples. But inside, it was chaos. Later, reports came out that Gavin had been unfaithful, including a headline-grabbing scandal involving their nanny. Gwen didn't sugarcoat how it felt. She said her family was completely ruined. It was crushed. She compared herself to a broken mess, saying she didn't even know how to get out of bed some mornings. So there they were, Blake and Gwen, sitting in their giant red chairs on The Voice, smiling for the cameras, throwing playful jabs at contestants. But behind the scenes, they were both falling apart. Blake admitted later that he was drinking too much, stuck at his ranch, feeling like life had just pulled the rug out from under him. Gwen, meanwhile, was holding on for her kids, but felt like her entire identity had been ripped away. It's strange, how life works. These two people, who couldn't have been more different, suddenly found themselves living parallel lives. Same stage, same spotlight, same heartbreak. And it was that shared pain that cracked the door open to something new. Blake would later tell Billboard, "Gwen saved my life." And he meant it. He said nobody else on earth could have understood what he was going through. Not even his closest friends, because Gwen was living the same nightmare. Divorce is painful enough when you're a regular person. When you're famous, and every detail is plastered across tabloids and gossip sites. It's brutal. Gwen got it. She didn't need him to explain. She was right there in it, too. For Gwen, Blake became her lifeline. She told Howard Stern that at that time, she wasn't looking for love at all. She was just trying not to die. She'd pour her feelings out in emails to Blake, and he'd write back. Soon, emails turned into texts, and texts turned into late-night conversations. Slowly, without even realizing it, they were becoming each other's safe place. Blake put it best when he said, "Next thing I know, I wake up and she's all I care about." That's not some throwaway line. That's a man admitting he went from rock bottom to suddenly caring about something again, someone again. This wasn't a rebound fling. This was two broken people finding light in each other at the exact moment they needed it most. Gwen later said she felt like God himself had placed them in each other's path for a reason. And honestly, when you look back at the timing, it's hard not to believe it. But here's the thing. While they were leaning on each other behind the scenes, the world was starting to notice something. Whispers turned into headlines, and soon, rumors were flying everywhere. And that's where the story shifts, because by the fall of 2015, their private bond was about to become very, very public. Were the rumors real? By the fall of 2015, the energy between Gwen and Blake on The Voice was impossible to miss, even if you weren't paying close attention. They weren't just joking around anymore, the kind of playful banter fans had seen since Gwen joined the show. Something had shifted. The way Blake leaned in when Gwen spoke, the way she would grin at his teasing, the quiet little touches when the cameras weren't rolling. It was all there, hiding in plain sight. Those who noticed could sense it. These two weren't just colleagues anymore. Of course, the press noticed too. The tabloids went into overdrive. 2 high-profile divorces, just months apart. And now this? Headlines ran wild. Country meets couture. The rebound no one saw coming, the Voice's new power couple. Paparazzi were relentless. Airports, coffee shops, even studio parking lots. They followed, clicked, and waited for that one definitive shot. And the shot finally came during Halloween weekend. Gwen, dressed as only Gwen could be, flawless, extravagant, impossible to ignore, showed up at a party, and Blake was right there beside her. Photographers caught him with his hands gently around her waist, both of them laughing, completely unguarded. Overnight, what had been whispers among insiders became impossible to deny. Fans couldn't stop talking. Social media exploded with speculation, memes, and theories. Still, questions remained. Were they just two wounded people leaning on each other, or was there something more? The answer came just a few weeks later. In early November of 2015, their teams released a short statement, but crystal clear. Gwen Stefani and Blake Shelton were officially dating. The story wasn't a rumor anymore. It was real. For fans, the pairing was unexpected. Gwen, the platinum blonde, punk rock icon with a career spanning decades, fashion lines, and sold-out world tours. Next to Blake, the 6'5" country star from Oklahoma with dimples, boots, and a voice that had dominated country radio for years. On paper, they didn't make sense. But when they were side by side, there was a chemistry you couldn't fake. The real proof came in May of 2016, with their performance of Go Ahead and Break My Heart on The Voice. The song wasn't just a duet, it was a confession. Written by two people learning to trust again, it was raw and vulnerable. The shaky smiles, the nervous glances, the subtle tension in their voices, it wasn't staged. The audience could feel every pulse of emotion, the thrill of something real breaking through the spotlight. Yet behind the smiles and the music, there was something Gwen kept private. While the world was falling for their story, she was quietly battling doubts that nearly ended everything before it even started. Gwen finally speaks out. The early days of Gwen and Blake's relationship were chaotic in ways most people couldn't imagine. It wasn't just the fact that they were dating. Both were coming off high-profile, messy divorces, but the timing couldn't have been worse. Gwen was juggling 3 young boys, Kingston, Zuma, and Apollo, school schedules, soccer practices, piano lessons, and the emotional fallout of 13 years of marriage. Her world was upside down. She often felt stretched thin, carrying the weight of a fractured family while trying to navigate a new love in the public eye. At one point, she remembers thinking it was too much, that adding a new relationship to the chaos might be a mistake. She admits there were moments when she couldn't even bring herself to talk to Blake, when the sheer pressure of her own life felt suffocating. But Blake, unlike what you might expect from a country star constantly in the spotlight, didn't panic. He didn't call 100 times or try to convince her she was making a mistake. Instead, he did what he knew could break through the walls she'd built. He reached for music. He sent her a rough melody, a few lines of lyrics, just enough to show he got her, to show he understood her world without needing to explain in words. For Gwen, who has spent her life pouring her heart into songwriting, it was the most personal gesture he could make. She didn't just receive it, she responded. Over text, she finished the lyrics, and that musical conversation became the thread that drew them closer, a quiet but powerful bridge between two broken hearts trying to heal. Blake's loyalty didn't stop there. He stepped into Gwen's life fully, embracing the role of stepfather with seriousness and care. Reports and social media posts show him fishing with the boys, teaching them guitar, and just being present in ways that many new step-parents struggle to achieve. He even involved himself in their daily routines, helping with homework, cheering at soccer games, and creating little traditions that gave the boys a sense of stability during a time of major change. Before proposing, he even asked the boys for their blessing, showing how deeply he valued their feelings. Blake has reflected on the experience, saying that becoming a stepdad changed me in every possible way and taught him that life isn't just about him anymore. He even left his long-running role on The Voice to focus on family, openly admitting that money couldn't buy back time with the kids, and he didn't want regrets. It's that steady, patient, empathetic side of Blake, the side fans rarely see, that won Gwen over. But while this explains a lot about why they clicked, it only tells part of the story. There's something else at play, something deeper that goes beyond music, beyond family, beyond even love, a secret Gwen has hinted at but rarely puts into words until now.